Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning and into your lunch hour. My name is Lauren Breedy, and I am the Program Manager of Alumni and Donor Experience at the UC Alumni Association, and I'm a liaison to UC Young Professionals. And this morning, I'm joined by my colleagues, Maggie Ibrahim-Taney and Cynthia Miller, who helped plan this morning's program. Before we begin, I'd like to start with just some housekeeping items. You may have noticed that you entered this event on mute. If you could remain on mute until we get to the Q&A portion of the program, we would greatly appreciate it. And we also encourage you to turn your cameras on if you are in a space or feel comfortable doing so. We are recording this session and it will be made available to you in a post-event email that will be sent within the next couple of days. Also, if you do not feel comfortable when we get to the Q&A portion, unmuting yourself and asking, feel free to drop it into the chat box, and Maggie and I will be facilitating that and moderating that throughout the program as well. Before we begin, I want to share a quick video message from Jen Heisey, the Vice President of Alumni and Donor Experience.
Welcome to today's program, one of many offered by your UC Alumni Association. Before we begin, it's important for me to say thank you for joining us. By actively participating in our offerings and experiences, you are harnessing the power of your alumni network. There are Bearcats all over the world, more than 315,000 alumni in 127 countries, which makes virtual programs like this so rewarding. These challenging times do come with a silver lining. We are more connected than ever before, creating boundless opportunities. The University of Cincinnati and each of you is stronger and better positioned because of our lifelong connections through our alma mater. We love providing opportunities like this one, where alumni can learn, network, and give back. So settle in and enjoy today's program. And if you like what you hear today, please share it on social media using the hashtag #ThyLoyalChildren. Thanks again for joining us. Go Bearcats!
It is my pleasure to kick off our panel for this morning by introducing Jack Fitzgerald. Jack is a UC alum. He graduated in 2017 with a degree in communications and a minor in psychology. And then came back to UC and graduated with a Master's of Art in Psychology in 2020. He is the BOLD Program Manager for the Leadership Council of Nonprofits and will be moderating our panel discussion this morning. Take it away, Jack.
Thanks so much, Lauren, and welcome everybody. First and foremost, just want to thank our panelists who are with us today. They went through a program that we run at the Leadership Council for Nonprofits, which is a nonprofit itself. The mission of the Leadership Council is to maximize the impact of nonprofits, develop their leaders, and strengthen the community. So BOLD is a program of Leadership Council, and the entire purpose of the program is to train, educate, prepare, and connect individuals who go through the program to nonprofit board service opportunities. So a little bit about how this panel came together is really kind of a fun story, but in short, we were talking with Cynthia and we said, hey, you know, we have some pretty big movers and shakers who are also UC YPs, young professionals who graduated from BOLD. And one of them specifically, maybe she'll share this story later, but I remember a comment that she said to me while she was in the BOLD program. And she said, you know, Jack, I think I'm too young to serve on a board. And by the end of the program, she had informed me that she had joined a board. So each one of our panelists today, and they will be introducing themselves here just in a few seconds, but each one of them is serving the community in a unique way, and again, went through the BOLD program. And our goal by the end of the day here is to talk with you about their UC story, how they knew and when they knew it was the right time to get involved in the community, and just some more of their perspective on how volunteer experiences has enriched their lives, have given them a seat at the table. And we're hoping that this conversation will help you to think about what is it that you are passionate about? How are you maybe getting involved in the community already? And what would you like that to continue to look like throughout your career? And really, that's our goal, to get you to think a little bit more about that idea today. So let's introduce our panelists. Grace, you want to get us started?
Yes, if I can get myself off mute. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining today. I'll share a little bit about my UC story and what I'm up to now. Does that sound good, Jack? Okay, perfect. So my name is Grace Hertline. I just graduated from UC last year, so May of 2020. I graduated on Zoom, which was a bizarre experience, but still exciting nonetheless. Before I came to UC, so I'm a Cincinnati native, and I, like a lot of independent high school kids, I thought, I'm gonna go far away. I don't want to be in Cincinnati. I'm gonna look for something new and different. But the more experiences I had with UC, you know, I took a tour, I went to the DAP camp to learn a little bit more about UC. I fell in love with the community and everything that it had to offer. So I studied graphic design in the DAP program. And what's really unique about that program that I loved is that it is more than just an art school. There's opportunities for leadership, for community engagement. I really wanted to be a tour guide. So, you know, there's just a lot of fun things that you can balance at UC that other art schools did not have. So I ended up at DAP. I got so involved with the UC community. I was a tour guide. I was involved in student government, our student alumni council with the Alumni Association, and then some more involvement within DAP, but really loved getting rooted in this community. So then when I graduated, I had co-opted with Procter & Gamble, and I ended up working full-time with them. And I'm really excited to be able to start my career in Cincinnati and continue working with that same community that I was so engaged with while I was at UC. And I think that's about it.
Thank you, Grace.
Hi, I'm Devin Lampy, and I graduated from UC December of 2018. Since then, I've been working at a data consulting company here called Dunhumby as a technical account manager. And honestly, my UC experience in studying information systems was the perfect lead into the job that I have today, which is great because I loved my UC experience. So one of the reasons why I chose to go to UC is I was able to intern in high school. That made me very focused on getting out into the workforce, and I loved UC's co-op program. From that program, I was able to volunteer actually, and also intern at a variety of companies, nonprofits, startups in the Cincinnati area, which really helped me see a vast number of industries, including the nonprofit industry, which I was really drawn to as well. Dunhumby is not a nonprofit, but is very into the community, which also drew me to that company. While I was at UC, I was involved in things like sorority life, TEDx U Cincinnati, and some other organizations, which kept me very busy. And now I am working with a nonprofit called A Voice for the Innocent, as well as helping web consult for Land Conservancy in Ohio.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sachika, and my pronouns are she, hers. I went to University of Cincinnati, of course, and graduated in 2019 with my bachelor's in sociology. And I later came back to finish my master's in sociology as well, and graduated on Zoom in 2020. In terms of what I was involved with at UC, I think there were 3 organizations that really shaped my experience. One was TEDx U Cincinnati, the second one was GlobeMed, and the third one was Midwest Lamaka. So I always danced growing up, and Midwest Lamaka is a Bollywood fusion competition that UC hosts every year with dancers, over 200 dancers from across the country. So I had the opportunity to direct that the year that I graduated, as well as in GlobeMed, I was pretty heavily involved. And GlobeMed is an experience where university students are paired with global grassroots organizations. And so I worked with UC's partner, which was called Social Action for Children and Women in Mae Sot, Thailand. And the summer after I graduated from undergrad, I got to go and work there in person. So those were kind of the experiences that really stuck with me. So after finishing my master's, I got to actually go work for GlobeMed full time. So I've been here for a year now, and I oversee our partnerships globally, as well as in terms of volunteering. I got to stay connected with the South Asian dance community by joining our national board called the Desi Dance Network, which kind of collaborates with competitions and dancers all across the country, as well as other South Asian artists too. So that's kind of what I've been up to recently, is being a board member and directing our sexual assault prevention and diversity and inclusion initiatives.
So if you couldn't tell by their introductions, an amazing group of women. We like to say that getting involved in the community as a young professional is kind of akin to joining a club or a student organization at the University of Cincinnati. And just for the sake of your engagement and getting the chat involved, I wonder if you would share, those of you who joined us this morning, what organizations were you a part of when you were at the University of Cincinnati? And while you're doing that, we'll start with our first question for the panelists. And Sachika, we can start with you, since we'll snake back to Grace. But what was your motivation behind getting involved in the community?
Sure. So I think it was definitely twofold. One is growing up, giving back has always been pretty central to my family and my community. So everyone around me has always been involved in something. So it kind of was natural to me, but also working in the nonprofit world sometimes, or I think just working in general, after you graduate, you have a lot of skills that you get to apply in your university experience. But then when you work, you start to specialize. And you kind of start to miss those other pieces of things you did, whether for me it was event planning and I think data analysis. And so with the Desi Dance Network, I was able to find a role where I could bring those back to start working in those areas again. And so we planned a bunch of events and used data to create better initiatives around sexual assault prevention. And that was really, really gratifying for me so far, and it creates a space for me to continue to challenge myself. And right now I'm leaving GlobeMed and applying for some new roles, and my nonprofit experience has always been something that comes up and that I can talk about and that I think really resonates with people and makes me stand out.
Yeah, I can go next. So for me, when I was in college, as I mentioned, I had worked for nonprofits and had really found those rewarding experiences, but also had worked for some nonprofits where their main goal was to assist other nonprofits. So I got to realize in our Cincinnati community how many charities and nonprofits there were, and was really taken aback by not only how many, but how many were also volunteer driven, how many relied heavily on committees and community members to help. And then also the dire need for people who are in my industry, which is more the IT tech side. So, which is an expensive industry if you don't have volunteers to help you in certain things. So I always knew when I graduated that was something in the back of my head, but I always thought like, oh, I will do that when I am 50 and post having a family and have time on my plate. And also in my mind, creating this profile of who serves on boards and who assist organizations to that kind of level. And that's when, after working for 3 to 4 years, realized that I was creating walls that didn't exist, and that I could use the time that I had to do something I was interested in helping out with today at my age, due to the need and how welcoming the nonprofit community is.
All right, and I think my answer to this question is also layered. There's a couple of components for me. Like Devin had said earlier, so Procter & Gamble is definitely not a nonprofit. And when I started working there, I had this picture of like a big corporate environment. And that made me a little nervous as a designer, where my job is to be creative and think big. But when I got there, my perception changed a little bit. So everyone there does what they do so that our company can give back to the communities in which we work. And then on top of that, everyone there has something that they're passionate about outside of the work that they're doing in the day. So when you meet someone, it's like, okay, what is your role at work? And then what are the 3 things that you do outside of work? And when I started, I had just graduated. My answer was, I just work. Like, I just graduated. I'm done with all of these student organizations. So I found myself craving like something else to be doing with a purpose that wasn't just working. And I think that was compounded by the virtual world. When I started during COVID, I sat and looked at my computer all day and did my job. And then like that was every single day. So I was looking for something to do to engage in the community. And I was able to find that through the BOLD program and through some of the nonprofits that I started to learn about. Another reason that I think this is such a good space to get into and finding a volunteer opportunity you're passionate about is that sometimes the thing that you do at work might not be the thing that you love to do, but a nonprofit might have a job available or a volunteer position available that is the thing you love to do. So in my case, I love graphic design and my job is a design manager. So I don't do a ton of hands-on design work, but I do that on the nonprofits in which I work. So it's a fun way to find a space to do something you're passionate about that's different than your job. It's like a little rambly way to say that, but if you have any questions, you can let me know.
Thank you, three, for those great answers. And one of my favorite things, just in getting to know each one of you, is Grace actually recommended the program to Sachika. So just on the note of building community and sharing this with your friends and your connections, you know, Devin, you said something that I saw Grace nod when she said it, and you said that you were putting up walls that didn't exist. And you know, we talked about this in preparing for the panel, the idea of building community. And you know, I see that in the chat, folks have chimed in about SAC and Club Hispano and the UC Latino Alumni Network. You know, those are spaces where community is being built. And looking at the gap that you all had between graduate school or undergrad and your community involvement, just looking back on that, do you see how it has helped you build community? Any response to just the relationships that you've made, people you've met, community you've built through getting involved?
Yeah, I can share a quick answer to that. I remember when I started to get involved in BOLD, I thought there's no way that there's a seat at the table for me on a board because I'm in my 20s, I just started my job, and I've never done this before. Like, I don't know how to contribute to something like this, but I think we've all been part of communities our whole life that, whether you know it or not, have prepared you for something like this, especially in your involvement at school. Like, okay, you've worked on group projects before, like that skill is transferable to something like a board. I know that's kind of a basic example, but I think even if you feel unqualified for something, the experiences that you've had can all be built upon. And it's okay to go into it scared. Like everything that you've done in your life will help you with an experience like that.
Yeah, I was gonna state that. So hearing that Grace actually recommended Sachika, it's interesting because one of the things that really drove me to get the confidence to apply to the BOLD program and to pursue this is the fact that knowing Jack from the UC community, seeing that he was program director, I had reached out to him and kind of stated, okay, this is an interest of mine. What do I need to do in order to become a potential candidate for the program? And his answer was apply. And so having those cheerleaders and those people who are building up your confidence to something like that is really helpful in kind of taking that first step. And I'd say the second thing too, in terms of communities, is everyone that I have met in the wider Cincinnati and even UC alumni is always open for questions, conversations, and to talk. So the number of different organizations that I had talked to during the BOLD program who introduced me to all these organizations, and even post, everyone's so willing to just talk to you about their organization, talk to you about their experience, to kind of find what's the right fit, what do you have the time commitment for, what are all the different roles or ways that you can help. Because I often find a lot of board service is one option that I have found to be really rewarding and helpful in like my personal career, but there's so many other ways that you can help, or organizations will kind of meet you where you're at. So I think it's flexible and super welcoming, which makes it easy for a community to join.
Yeah, I think for me, I can definitely resonate with that feeling of boards like seeming very intimidating. So joining GlobeMed and getting to know our board, we have huge names on our board, like Paul Farmer. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with him, but he's pretty revered in the global health world. I actually didn't even know he was alive because he's just so like well spoken of. He seems like someone from a while back, and he's on our board. So it seems like you have to. And when I looked at like the board signature on my cover or on my offer letter, it was like everyone had so many letters after their name, or so many big name organizations attached to their name. So I felt like it has to be something I do when I'm like 50, like Devin was saying, have all these accolades behind me. But when I started joining the board meetings, one thing I started seeing was that one is that nobody really knows what they're doing all the time. Like people, like Devin was saying, it's so easy to just reach out to someone, and that's the number one way we solve our answers or solve our problems is when GlobeMed is experiencing someone, we start reaching out to our network and asking questions. And so the board members were really just our avenues for getting to reach more people. And at the same time, like working with an older audience, I could definitely start noticing gaps in some understandings of like diversity and inclusion, or more like recent conversations that we had a lot in undergrad that I realized like I could bring to the table. And so for me, I started realizing that, and as they started asking us questions and like showing us that they had interest in our expertise too as staff members and as younger people and younger advocates for global health, we started like realizing that there is like a sense of, there is a community there, and that there's a seat for us at their table.
And I'd like to talk more about that, just getting to the table. And, you know, sometimes I know in my own life, I'll put a mental blocker or a self-imposed barrier on myself. And, you know, you mentioned one of them, Sachika, you know, I'm too young to do this, or these individuals have too many letters after their last name. Can you talk, can we talk as a group about the getting to the table and how the virtual landscape has expanded opportunities to participate? You know, maybe just specifically addressing like the commitment that you felt, and maybe how being virtual has allowed more flexibility in your schedule to join a meeting after work, or how do you see that? How do you see that playing out, especially for somebody who's thinking this might be a path for them as well, in terms of a commitment?
I think in terms of accessibility, just being in the virtual world has pushed every organization to become so much more virtually literate. A lot of the nonprofits that I volunteered with before, especially working in GlobeMed, where we were working with like global grassroots organizations, not a lot of our partners knew before how to like use Google Drive, or were more unfamiliar with Zoom calls. So we often like worked through WhatsApp, which is like a international group messaging app. And so this year, or in the past 2 years, we've seen students being able to create a Google Doc with their partner and actually work on a project together and collaborate very, very efficiently, or hop on a Zoom call pretty quickly and introduce their partner to their whole campus, and invite other organizations to learn about global health equity too. And I saw that at in Cincinnati and in like domestic or like US-based nonprofits as well. So in terms of accessibility, I think people are just much more, they see so much more possibility in being able to engage online. So whereas before people were like, oh, online meetings are so impersonal, people kind of like bit the bullet, or like broke through that like kind of mental barrier around online spaces being very stagnant and difficult to have strong discussions, started utilizing like breakout rooms, the chat function, and made discussions a lot more productive than I think like sometimes they are in person even. So as much as there is still value of working in person, and a lot of times with nonprofits, being at in-person events and getting to actually meet the community members is really valuable, but still there's a lot that you can do online. So I think that every nonprofit at this point understands how to work online and is very willing to work with you to be able to gain your skills and just have you be a part of their cause, because every nonprofit is understaffed. We all need support. So really getting any hands is the goal.
For the organization that I work with, the Voice for the Innocent, uniquely, even before the world turned to more virtual avenues for meeting for boards and things like that, 2 of our board members were not in the greater Cincinnati area. And so how they used to run board meetings is everybody used to be in one large boardroom, and then they would show on the screen the 2 board members who were remote, who would have to listen and try to figure out who's talking in the smaller image of all of us sitting at a board table. And I'll state, we kind of talked about next steps and what does the world look like as things are kind of opening up, and the amount that we have all been able to connect on an individual level to people who weren't in our area has drastically increased now that we're all in a format just like we are today, so that everybody's on the same playing field. So I think first off, I have been able to virtually see people and talk to them more in this environment than I would have previously. Second benefit I've seen is time. Time is always going to be a limited resource. And so when you look at volunteering and you think about the time commitment you're able to give, if you cut out commutes to board meetings, if you cut out all this other stuff, that's time that you get to circle back into working with that board or working with that organization or walking your dog or doing anything else that you need in order to balance your life. And so I found balancing volunteer and board work along with other commitments in a virtual space has been really important for being able to reach a wider audience of people who have that more limited time available.
And I'll share from the board that I serve on. It's kind of an interesting case. So I work in an organization called PONES, which is a dance collaborative. And unlike Sachika, I have no dance experience. So when I started, I felt a little out of my element, but that's a story for a different day. It would be really tempting to say everything had to halt when we went virtual, because it's hard to dance on screen. When everyone's in different places, it's hard to choreograph a dance when you're not all in the same room. But I've been so amazed by how the organization has adapted. There are 2 components that PONES works in. One is they teach dance lessons to Cincinnati neighborhoods that don't necessarily have strong access to arts education. And then they also put on performances in public and for events. And so those 2 things are hard to do virtually. So they've done as much as they can. They do performances, for example, outside the Ronald McDonald House. So the residents can come to their window, watch a dance outside. But then they've also started to expand the services that they provide. They are putting on dance lessons over Zoom. So you can sign up for a Zoom class, you get online, and then there's a dance instructor that teaches you how to do it in your own house. And because they're expanding capabilities that way, we're able to reach a much bigger audience than we were before. To Devin's point, if dancers didn't have time to travel to an event or to a meeting, now they might be able to jump in and do a performance from their own house without having to go anywhere. So we've really expanded our reach outside of Cincinnati, outside of some of the schools we were working with before. And even though it looks a little bit different, I think we're still making an impact in our adapted way of doing things. So I think as I think about the future, I think we'll probably be looking at a hybrid of in-person and virtual experiences, but it's nice to know that even something that was so physical as dancing, you can do in this virtual environment. I still haven't learned how to dance, by the way.
Maybe by the next panel, Grace. We we, through the BOLD program, one of the components of BOLD is you're required to do a board meeting observation. And it really enhances the learning experience. As you all know, as graduates of UC, big on experiential learning. And the reason I bring that up is we collect these opportunities from our nonprofit members at the Leadership Council. And all of the board meetings that we've collected for this year are still virtual. And just bring that up to share with you that, you know, you can participate from a coffee shop in your board meeting, or you can, you know, finish dinner for your family and run upstairs and jump on a call. There's a bit more flexibility. And then in terms of nonprofits being more comfortable utilizing technology, the Leadership Council as an organization is embracing technology as well as a means for connecting people. So I think getting involved in your community is going to continue to become a lot, I don't want to use the word easier, but perhaps accessible is the right way to put it. So just, I think, rewinding a little bit on where we've come so far through this panel, I think it's so cool to reflect on the participants' journeys. You know, we heard Midwest Amaka, we heard TEDx, we heard SAC. These are all organizations that the panelists were involved in while they were at UC. And then in the chat here, we have A Voice for the Innocent, Globe Med, and Poems. It's neat for me to see that journey, and hopefully for you as well, to see that journey of the participants from the university to the community. And, you know, one of the first classes I took at the University of Cincinnati, my freshman year in 2013, was called How to Change the World. And I think this is probably a question that all of us on this call, just by being on this call, I'm sure you've thought about. And my next question for the panelists today is, how has the BOLD program, as well as, you know, when you think back on your experiences at the University of Cincinnati to where you are today, how have these helped you to better understand your purpose?
I can go ahead. So in terms of purpose, I think that is a question that can change over time. So like what my purpose may have been, or what I wanted to focus on in college versus when I first started my career versus now, has differed. So in college, it was very much I wanted to really grow my network and really understand what my purpose was. I think a lot of people go to college and are trying to figure out, what do I want my career to be? What do I want my life to look like? And then once I kind of decided those things, the next thing I wanted to do, my first line of purpose focus, was to be good at my job. So that was a lot of hours on scaling up of skill, scaling my knowledge of the company, technical skills, all of this. So all of my time was being poured into that because I had put so much investment into figuring out what I wanted to do and being trained to do that through UC, that I wanted to make sure that I was getting off on the right foot. Then following that, after getting to a good place in my career at dunnhumby, and then also going through the BOLD program, it really helps you think about, okay, what outside of work, and focusing on creating a well-rounded purpose. So not being targeted on one specific thing, but that purpose can be associated with career, family, outside in the community, things like that. And I think what Grace mentioned in terms of not just focusing on what do you do, but what all do you contribute to, I think is a good way to put it. And so for me, I help grocery retailers personalize coupons, and that the business aspect and the career aspect of that, I get a lot of satisfaction from, but I don't necessarily get those warm and fuzzy feelings of helping community and people through that. And so I knew that for my purpose, I wanted to also achieve those things in kind of a well-balanced way. And through A Voice for the Innocent and helping sexual assault victims was something that I was very, very passionate about, but never really knew as someone whose talents were IT and technology, where I could really help with that. I'm not a counselor. I'm not trained in any sort of victim assistance, anything like that. So while it's a passion of mine, I didn't really know how my training could help assist with that. And I think when you get to that board level, it really helps widen the skill sets that are needed. So whether it's marketing, whether it's technology, business, design, anything like that. So it really helped me meet some of the passions that I had to create that well-rounded base, but still use the technical skills that I gained through UC.
Yeah, I think about it in a similar way. I think about there's like if we're looking at a Venn diagram, there's like the things you're good at and then the things you love doing. And sometimes your job will be the things you're really good at, but maybe you don't love it. For example, I design fabric softener bottles. I'm not passionate about fabric softener any more than it's just, I like my job, but I am good at graphic design and I'm passionate about the culture and arts space and volunteering there. So I think your opportunity to volunteer is kind of finding the intersection of that Venn diagram, like what you're good at and what you love doing, and finding somewhere where those two things meet. And then that creates a really cool opportunity to, as Devin said, kind of grow like the breadth of what you are as a person and what you do beyond just your job.
Through the BOLD program, we did a character strengths test. And so I think that was like one of the first things we did. And I learned that my top three were bravery, love of learning, and appreciation of beauty and excellence. And that kind of helped me see those three like terms, helped me see like the kind of common thread that there was throughout all of my experiences that I really resonated with in UC. And that kind of helped me figure out what I could bring to DDN, the nonprofit that I'm on a board for now. In terms of like bravery, I've learned that I'm a risk taker when it comes to leadership. So I was able to start 2 committees, the diversity, inclusion, and sexual assault 4 committees from the ground up, and like create the strategy, start figuring out different work streams, project plans, delegating to a completely virtual team that was across the country that also didn't know each other, and facilitating team dynamics. So I got to kind of like carry out the whole structure of these 2 projects actually. And in those, I saw the bravery where it was like risk taking. It was something I'd never done before. For love of learning, it was continuing to learn about sexual assault prevention and diversity and inclusion so that I could be better at what I was doing. And then with the appreciation of beauty and excellence, I like to see things done well. So like seeing a certain quality of work and pushing ourselves to reach that, as well as just being able to work in the art space too, and collaborate with dancers and create a safer environment for them. All of those, like I saw how those helped me fulfill my purpose, which is just like doing things that make me think and make me come alive. And so in going back to kind of why or how I found that purpose, it was in, like I said, in university or in college, I saw how my purpose was being fulfilled. But then graduating, you start working, and especially in the virtual environment, I feel like when you graduate, normally you graduate, you get a job, you move somewhere and you miss your friends, but then you make a new community. And for me, I graduated, I got a job, but I didn't get to go anywhere because it was a pandemic. So I was at home in a suburb. I'm in my childhood bedroom. And so I got that feeling of losing my community at UC, but I didn't get the experience of finding a new one, and I haven't yet. And so with that, I was like, all right, so I see my 3 character strengths. I'm not getting to use them to the best of my ability. So I needed to find something where I could. And for me, that was being on the DDN board.
Thank you, 3. The three musketeers here. They are valiant in their leadership and their work and efforts. We will open up for questions now. I was really excited to see some familiar. I don't think I've had the privilege of meeting any of the attendees here, but I did see Damien, I gave you a shout out in the chat. Messer's a huge supporter of Bold. I wonder what questions you all have for the panelists today. And feel free to take yourself off of mute.
Hey guys, I guess I can ask my question. My name is Loretta. I am a 2018 graduate of IS, so Devin, I can relate there to all those classes. And I got my MBA in 2020, graduating with that. So I guess I'm kind of just like you guys of like graduating and just kind of being like working, but not feeling like super, passionate about it. I think that was really funny about the bottles, like the fabric softener bottles of designing those. But I was just wondering if I'm not ready to be like a board member or someone on the panel, like how do I, or, what does that time commitment look like? And then also, I'm very passionate about volunteering. I did it a lot in high school because the opportunities were just there. High schools are a lot better at that. So how would you suggest like finding volunteer nonprofit opportunities if maybe I'm not ready to actually like sit on a board?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So along with being a board of A Voice for the Innocent, I helped do kind of web tech consulting to Cardinal Land Conservancy in Ohio. And it's really unique how I ended up going through that. So part of the Bold program, along with shadowing some of those meetings, there is a process where people who are looking for board members will create all these little Zoom rooms and then you can get connected to them. But I mean, to be the same as like reaching out to any organization. And I was talking to someone who was looking for a board member, and I myself wasn't sure if I even wanted to be a board member at the time. But I kind of introduced myself and just flat out asked, like, what help are you guys looking for? Like, you're here looking for a board member. Kind of what skills or things are you looking for? And from looking at both the board member position they were looking for, helped guide the skill sets that they were looking for. So at that point, they were looking for someone who was in the web space. And knowing that my skills matched, I was able to kind of talk to them and state, hey, I'd be more than willing to take a look and help you guys. And that kind of started a really awesome working relationship I have with the organization where, as I mentioned, depending on the skill set, it can be hard to either find volunteers or find people who are just looking to volunteer in that specific area. And so I meet with them once a month and we talk about things that they want to change about the site. And it's kind of on our own terms with my own time commitments. Like, for instance, last month I was very busy. I got married and went on a honeymoon and we just kind of paused the project. So I think obviously there is board service, but reaching out to organizations and seeing what they're interested or maybe what skill sets they're looking for help in marketing or tech. I know you said IS, so anything like that. There are so many organizations that are looking for that. So if board membership is a little bit more either something that you might want to pursue later or is too big of a time commitment, those positions that they might be looking for will still give you inclinations to the skill sets that they're lacking in their organization.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? That was a great question. And Loretta, it looks like you answered the question or asked the same question for Julie. So glad we got that answered. And interesting that was a shared thought. Anybody else? There's a prize for the next question.
Well, I'll go ahead and ask a quick question. Hi, everyone. My name is Ephraim Tafara, and I'm a UC graduate and work on campus in a leadership role. Um, I, I was interested to learn if there's any resources through Bold to find some resources in helping establish a nonprofit. Um, I'm involved with a new startup, going through the process and approval for 501c3 status. It's a small group of people that we know through our network back in East Africa, and just trying to figure out how to navigate through and building from scratch. So if there is any kind of resource, you know, just curious. Thank you.
Devin, Grace, Sachika, happy to answer that unless you have want to defer to you first.
I was just gonna say that when I joined the Bold program, I had zero knowledge of how a nonprofit worked because I didn't volunteer too much in the nonprofit space before I entered the program. So I knew it was somewhere I wanted to be, didn't have a lot of background knowledge to get me there. The Bold program was really helpful in learning the structure of a nonprofit, all of like the legal qualifications you need, learning about a budget, learning the different roles and responsibilities. So I would say just from a knowledge and learning standpoint, it would be very beneficial to go through. It took me from a place of knowing nothing to knowing slightly more than nothing. Jack, do you want to tackle like the more like technical aspect of resources and how Bold might be able to help?
Yes, so I have my textbook here, and I'm going to read you a couple pages. I'm just kidding. We have had a number of founders come through the Bold program with similar aspirations. One in particular, a woman who works for First Financial Bank, she started an organization for women who grew up without a father. And what she found while going through Bold was that her organization was one of the only of its kind in the country, actually. And she, through Bold, made connections with our faculty, so the people who actually teach in the program. If you looked on our website, we have about 20 nonprofit executive directors and consultants who are working in the space, who teach on various aspects of nonprofit life, as Grace alluded to. So, you certainly do not have to go through Bold. We didn't want to make today about, just pitching the Bold program by any means. I think, we would be more than happy to make any kind of connections for you with any of our faculty, as well as our alumni. On the idea of building a community, as we talked about earlier today, that's something that at the Leadership Council we take very seriously, making sure that we're connecting the people in the community who want to help and make a difference. So we'd be happy to connect with you outside of this call and make any connections you feel would be helpful. So we have time for maybe one more question. I know I have one to close us out, but does anybody have anything else they're wondering about this morning? Damien, I cannot hear you. Do you want to put your question in the chat?
There it is. Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yep.
A good old triple mute. Sorry about that. But my name is Damian Rushing and graduated from UC in 2016 with a bachelor's in architectural engineering. I currently work at Messer as an estimator. I was just curious, what is the time commitment for the actual program, the boat program?
Well, once you're in bold, you're in for life. So, but the formal commitment to the program is 9 weeks. So there's an orientation at the very beginning, just like you would go through for any class at UC. And then the 7 weeks in the middle are on various aspects of nonprofit board life. So strategic planning, understanding nonprofit financial statements. We have a, excuse me, a diversity, equity, and inclusion session. So these are just a sampling. The rest are, you can find the topics on our website, but then we finish with a graduation. So the graduation is really just a celebration of what's been learned, and that's the commitment. About 9 weeks. You have a mentor. You're assigned a mentor who will follow up with you and be a one-to-one support up to 90 days for 90 days after the program. So that's usually a monthly check-in. And then myself and our executive director Jenny Berg are available for one-on-one personal conversations. So that's a little bit about the program. Is that helpful?
Thank you. It does. Thank you.
So just to close us out here, we're at 9:25. I want to be respectful of the end of the panel here. Or I'm sorry, I'm on a different timetable here than you all are. But for the panelists, can you address what it means to you? We titled this talk very intentionally, having a seat at the table, and I just would like for each one of you to address what that means. I know, my hope in talking with UC in putting this together, as well as the three of you, is, can we create a movement where young professionals are celebrated and encouraged to get involved in the community, to serve on committees, to serve on nonprofit boards, to change the world through getting involved with the causes that they care about. Grace, Devin, Sachika, thank you so much for your leadership and time today. What does it mean to you to have this seat at the table at such a young age that you do now?
I'm happy to go first. For me, I think having a seat at the table is significant because sometimes, like, no matter what the situation, it's hard to feel empowered to take the next step. Like, we've talked about some barriers that are in the way, like, I'm too young for this, I don't have the right experience for this. Even still, sometimes in my board meetings, I'm like, wow, they let me in here. Like, I don't know what I'm doing yet. But I think there are really only two things that you absolutely need to be on a board or to volunteer at the nonprofit, and it's being willing to help and being willing to learn. I think a really important quality is being willing to be a lifelong learner. Like, okay, you know how to do your job, now what's next? Okay, I am in this volunteer position, now what more can I be doing? So I think if you can say you have those two things, being willing to help and being willing to learn, then you are already more than qualified for whatever you'd like to do next.
Okay, I'll go next. In terms of having that seat at that table, not only do I feel like I can give to the community, but I have also felt extremely empowered by that as well. And so, like, Grace's comment on having a little bit of that imposter syndrome has definitely gone away since working with and on a board. I'd also say, I think when I think about a seat at the table, I somehow think of some stuffy boardroom where everyone's in suits and you come with your printed agenda and red pen to talk through things. And at least with my experience, and I know it differs board to board, but at least the board I sit on, it feels more like a lunch table where everybody's swapping ideas, stories, collaborating, and having fun with it. And I think that's really what also shadowing and viewing different boards really broke down what I thought that a board acted like or was, and realized that it can be just as fun and rewarding as any organization I sat at UC.
To me, this is everything that it means to be a Bearcat. To me, this is everything it means to be boldly Bearcat. That's such a powerful campaign that I know when I was finishing graduate school, it inspired me. I'll be honest, it just gave me chills just thinking about what the power that is behind those two words. So Grace in the chat with the hashtag. So on that note, Maggie, we'll turn it back to you. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you guys so much for those insightful questions, and a huge thanks to our panelists and to Jack for creating this space for us to have this really meaningful conversation. You guys clearly love supporting your nonprofits, and I'm so grateful to have you guys incredible Bearcats out serving our community. So thank you guys so much for everything that you do for us, for your nonprofits, for UC and the community. Thank you again for everyone who joined us today. We love to hear your feedback about this event or any other events, ideas you have for future. We appreciate you attending. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we are crossing our fingers that we hope to see you in person soon. So take care, everyone.